First and Tuareg separatists and their jihadist allies in Mali say they have seized control of the key northern town of Kidal. It comes after a series of coordinated attacks on strategic junta positions in the West African nation since the weekend. 2 days of fierce fighting between the army and the jihadists, allied with the Tuaregs, is placing the future of the junta into doubt. In other parts of the country that saw violence earlier, peace has seemingly returned for now. Caroline Baum has the story.
Mali's Prime Minister visits the wounded in this hospital, following Saturday's attacks carried out by an alliance between jihadist and separatist groups. It was the largest coordinated offensive in the country in over a decade. The leader of the country's military junta, General Assimi Goïta, has not been seen since the unrest began. In his absence, Abdoulaye Maïga is looking to reassure the public, saying lessons will be learned so security can be improved.
The enemy's objective was to seize power by dismantling the institutions of the Republic. I urge the public not to give in to panic and to continue to cooperate with defense and security forces.
Neither of the groups that carried out the attacks have said they want to seize power. On Monday, the al-Qaeda-linked JNIM group, which has allied with Tuareg rebels, said they had gained control of Tessit, near the border with Niger and Burkina Faso. In a statement, the jihadist movement said it permitted government forces in the city to retreat safely. It's the second city claimed by the anti-government forces. The Azawad Liberation Front, or FLA, is seen here on Sunday, celebrating the taking of Kidal in the north of the country. The Tuareg separatists and allied jihadists seized the city following a series of coordinated attacks in Gao, Sévaré, Mopti, Bamako, and Kati, located about 15 kilometers northwest of the capital. It was there that Defense Minister Sadio Kamara was killed by a car bomb targeting his home. The UN Secretary General has expressed deep concern about the unfolding chaos and says he is closely following the situation. Bamako has not provided an overall death toll for the violence so far.
Joining me now from Brussels is Nina Wilen, an Africa specialist from Lund University and author of Securitizing the Sahel. Nina, thank you for your time. This alliance of al-Qaeda-linked militants and separatists in Mali is indeed marking a dangerous escalation in what is widely considered to be one of the world's deadliest regions for extremist violence. Perhaps many out there among our audience are not aware of that fact alone. So the big question is, are these rebels likely to unseat the junta?
Thank you for inviting me to speak about this today. Are the rebels likely to unseat the junta? They are definitely capable of attacking Bamako, the capital, as we've seen over the past few days. We've seen an unprecedented set of coordinated attacks across the country, which shows you a little bit of the strength that JNIM, together with the FLA, so the Tuareg separatists, have acquired over the past few years. They have, there is ironically a slogan, "Monter en puissance," so gaining strength, that the Malian army has circulated about itself over the past few years. But what we've actually seen is that it's the jihadist groups that have gained strength. And I think the proof of that was really what we saw over this weekend. Now, the question is, will the JNIM want to take over the country? That's not really certain. So far, what we've seen is that they're capable of attacking the capital. They're capable of taking over the cities in the north, as we've just saw. I'm not 100% sure that they would like to take over ruling the country at this stage. The overall broader objective for JNIM is, of course, to establish a caliphate across the Sahel region. But right now, I'm not sure that they want to actually rule the country. What is more probable is that they would try to negotiate with whoever is in power, whether that will be some form of the current military regime that we've already seen is decimated, or if there will be somebody else that's coming to power to exert control over key areas across the country.
Now, Tuareg separatists and jihadists have worked together before. In 2012, they seized much of the north of the country, triggering a collapse of the state's authority, which in turn prompted a French military intervention. Do you think if this situation continued, that we're likely to see any form of international intervention?
I do not think that France is likely to intervene again. The international context has completely changed. Today, we are surrounded by different armed conflicts that are closer to the European territory, notably the Ukraine-Russia war, but we also know that there are wars across in Iran and Israel and Lebanon and so on. So the international context is completely different, but so is the relationship between France and Mali and France and the other Sahel countries. As we know, in 2022, the French counterterrorism operation Barkhane left the region or left Mali after having been pressured quite a lot from the Malian junta at the time after there was a breakdown in relations between the Malian regime and the French government, which led then to this withdrawal. We also know that the Malian regime has expelled the UN peacekeeping mission, MINUSMA, which was in the country for over a decade in 2023, making it clear that they did not want to have Western forces on the ground. So I think it's very unlikely that there would be a Western intervention in the days or months to come. Mali is also part, of course, of the alliance of Sahelian states, an alliance which they created together with Niger and Burkina Faso after there was a coup in Niger in 2023. So far, however, what we've seen is that this alliance mainly seems to be on paper and not really have any effect in practice.
Given what we saw in terms of ammunition and arms over the weekend, with the level of those strategic attacks, the big question is, who's actually funding the Tuareg separatists and these jihadists?
So JNIM have different sources of finances. There is, of course, the zakat, the traditional, let's say, the tax that's paid by the citizens of the territories where jihadist groups are taking over and controlling those territories. That's one of the main sources. But it's also related to an increase in kidnappings. We've seen that JNIM has been particularly active in this area over the past year and increased the number of kidnappings. And last year, there were two Qatari persons of quite a high level that were kidnapped in Mali. And the Qataris, they paid the highest ransom so far that have been paid for hostages in the region, with $50 million, as well as some equipment, some military equipment. So that is, of course, a huge influx of money for the jihadist group. And it also, of course, increases the incentive to continue with this type of kidnappings, given the profit that they gain from it. And then we shouldn't forget that during the past few years, JNIM has been very successful in their attacks against the security forces, against the state security forces. So they have also recovered quite a lot of military material, including weapons from the state security forces, to the point where they have actually been able to sell some of that to other armed actors abroad and in the region. So there are different sources of financing, but clearly the kidnappings have been one of the major sources during the past year.
And then you have Russia. The Kremlin says Moscow urgently wants peace and stability in Mali. This, of course, as those rebels seized a key town that Russian troops have been protecting over the weekend. So do you see them walking away and washing their hands of this situation?
What we've seen is really that Russia has been humiliated quite publicly. They negotiated their exit from Kidal in the north, this symbolically important town that Russian troops under the name of Wagner helped to retake together with the Malian army in the fall of 2023 from the very same rebels that are now walking back into the town. So the Tuareg separatist group, which held that town for 10 years. So the fact that first the Russian troops are helping them, the Malian army, to take back that city, and that only less than 3 years later, they're losing the city, and that they're negotiating with the enemy, so the FLA and the JNIM, to walk out of there safe and sound, that does not give a great image of reliable security partners. And I do think that regardless of what happens in Mali, this will have repercussions for Russia in Africa more broadly as a security partner.
Which leads me to my final question, Nina. What are the regional implications of all of this?
It's really difficult to say right now what's going to happen in Mali. What seems to be quite sure is that the junta will have some sort of remodeling. We have not seen President Goita since Saturday, since the attack started. We know that the Minister of Defense, Sadio Kamara, who has been the main connection to Russia, has been killed. We also know that one of the number 3 of the junta is severely injured. So there is likely going to be some sort of restructuration. What's perhaps also very interesting is that in Niger and Burkina Faso have been very quiet, in spite of the fact that their alliance member and partner has been attacked. So there seems to be some sort of wait and see from their side of who is possibly going to stay or take over power in Mali to maintain the AES, so this Sahel alliance. In ECOWAS, so the West African Regional Organization, they have condemned the attacks and said that they would like the region to collaborate to fight against the jihadists. But what we've seen so far is that ECOWAS has not been very credible and been able to follow up neither on their joint force nor on the fact to fight jihadists together. So I think that the security architecture in the West African region, in the Sahel more specifically, is likely to evolve over the coming months even more.
Nina Wilen, an Africa specialist from Lund University and author of Securitizing the Sahel. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.